Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with a story about a divorce you definitely wouldn't want to be in. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Divorce housing shenanigans. My ex and I married quickly. We weren't too young, but we were young enough to be a little bit foolish. It was the best thing ever to happen to either of us, and it stayed that way for me. She fell out of love with me, and the months-long process that led up to the divorce was excruciating. Luckily for her, her sister-in-law was the premier local family law/divorce attorney for women, and of course her side of the case was handled pro bono. Neither of us really made much money, so I couldn't afford my own lawyer, so I decided that it was just easier to cut my losses and give her the entire house that we bought together. I took some furniture that I brought to the marriage and anything that was obviously otherwise mine, but gave her literally everything else. I moved back in with my old roommate. Everything was fine for a few months, but old what's-her-name eventually wanted to meet and hash out some details. Turns out she was having a hard time paying the mortgage on her own and wanted me to pay half. Even though she wanted the divorce, her name was the only one on the title, and I'd given her half of the rights to the house. I was flabbergasted. I suggested that she get a roommate, but she didn't want someone else living there. I told her that I couldn't afford my rent plus half of her mortgage. She mentioned that I had signed on as a co-guarantor of the mortgage, and I had to. She didn't want to make it an unpleasant part of our divorce settlement. I left our meeting absolutely screwed up. But after a drink or several, I had a realization. It was a risky gamble, but I knew her well enough to hope that it would work. I had lunch with her again and agreed that I could pay half of the mortgage, but she would have to help me move back in. Moving in? Absolutely. I definitely could not afford to pay her and pay rent somewhere else, and there'd never been any threat of violence between us, and my driver's license still listed our house as my legal residence. So at this point, there was nothing stopping me from walking right back in the door and setting myself up in the guest bedroom. We could eventually work out a polite arrangement for evenings when I might bring home a new romantic interest. So would she want me to move in immediately and prorate this month or wait until next month? Her jaw flapped a few times and she said that she'd have to consult with her lawyer, but that was the end of it. She dropped the issue and never asked for anything more. I still gave her a house just to get myself out from underneath her, but it was worth it. And our second story. Is the raw shrimp fully cooked? I work in a grocery store on the East Coast of the USA. I was working behind the seafood counter and had a customer walk up to me. I mean, everything seemed normal and all up until he opened his mouth. With a complete, serious, and straight face, he pointed at the raw shrimp we had on display. Mind you, there are signs that label the product right in front of each product, and asked, "Is this raw shrimp fully cooked?" I was completely caught off guard because I didn't expect a question so stupid. I mean, if he thought about the question before asking it, he would have known the answer. Completely restraining myself from making a snarky reply, I answered, "No, sir, the raw shrimp is not cooked. It's raw." And the customer seemed shocked for a moment, almost like they never heard of raw shrimp before. I'm not sure exactly what was going on in their mind. However, then they move in front of our cooked shrimp display. Pointing to it, he proceeded to ask, "Is this cooked shrimp fully cooked?" And again, I was surprised he felt like he had to ask us again, as there are signs in front of each product labeling it. "Yes, the cooked shrimp is cooked," I told them, and they proceeded to order a pound, U.S. weight, of the cooked shrimp. It was overall a bit strange, but later it was topped when a customer asked if the lobsters in my lobster tank were already cooked. I guess people in the town I work are a special kind of dumb. Yes, our lobsters are so fresh they keep moving even after we've boiled them to death. So we cook them and put them in the tank. And our next story. Group attempted to cut me out after I did about 60% of the work. This happened about 12 years ago while I was studying aeronautical engineering. Due to some money-grubbing legislation tactics, most who have gone to college know about the unnecessary courses that are tacked onto the degrees in order to graduate. One of those courses for my degree was a business class. Seriously, you'd think these guys would understand that most engineers don't do the business side of things. Thankfully, we had a teacher who was understanding of the fact that many of us in the class were bored out of our minds. I'll admit to having always been a geek/nerd who loved making good grades. If I don't understand something, I run at it hard and try to change that. This class stumped me for quite some time, and then a nightmare of a project was announced, one worth 50% of our grades. The school was a small one, the class a little more than 30 people, and I was assigned to work with 3 people I knew from other classes. We had problems straight away. 2 of the people remembered me from a calculus class that they barely passed as the person who sailed easily through and decided to dump their portion of the work on me straight away, knowing I wouldn't allow myself to fail. And they were right. At first, my other group member tried to pick up the slack as well, pulling hard to do a difficult project in a subject we barely understood. I'll admit she was a trooper. Unfortunately, she was also someone easily manipulated, and our 2 slacking group members began applying pressure during the semester for her to take the work and allow them to present it. The day the project finally comes, and I'm sick as a dog, pretty much quarantined in the clinic due to bronchitis. I managed to send a message to the teacher. The 2 slackers managed to wrangle the presentation from the girl who worked with me and presented it to the class, declaring that they had done all the work and I was skipping class because they told me they were going to tell the teacher what happened. My initial grade was an F. I was beyond pissed until I realized something important. Part of the project involved a written report, of which I held the only copy since I was the one to type it up. Cue the revenge. Privately, I went to the teacher with my notes and the report in order to get the grade I earned and to get him in on the plot. He agreed since it seemed fun and he planned to fail them anyway for academic dishonesty. Publicly, there was no report. The classmates that had attempted to take all the credit began to approach me, first demanding the report. Most of the time my response was, "But I didn't do any work," in such a sickly sweet voice. Then they attempted to act all buddy-buddy, trying to convince me that it had all been a joke and promising that they'd tell the professor that I had done some work, giving me some credit so that I had the possibility to pass. This was met with stony silence on most occasions before I told them that I'd rather fail than let them pass. Things escalated after that to include the door of my dorm room being rapped on at odd hours of the night, shoving, and them stealing my backpack and notebooks in order to try to find the report themselves. One of them even asked my roommate to let them search for a report I'd written and forgotten for our group. Didn't have her as my roommate the following semester. Things finally came to a head on the last week of classes. I'd held out on them for a month, not telling any of my group mates what I'd done, and enough time had elapsed that even if they were to turn in the report now, it'd be so late that they'd have still failed. They hadn't even attempted to do the report themselves, and the girl who had worked with me was in hysterics over the very real possibility of failing the class. It was what the teacher and I had been waiting for, and he finally decided to return the reports. The 2 slackers glared daggers at me as the teacher returned the report of every other group in the class before stopping in front of them. He was holding what looked to be one extra report, and they were immediately looking hopeful. He set a single sheet of paper on one of their desks before moving to the desk of the girl who'd worked along with me and set the report on her desk. "I had to dock some points for dishonesty, but you and your partner did decently," he stated before moving on. My partner realized what I'd done. We only got an 82 on our project, but it was far better than the 0 that our ex-group mates received. I'd been carefully documenting the harassment that the 2 slackers had put me through and ensured several witnesses saw some of what they did. 2 days after being informed that they were failing, the pair had new problems. I gave evidence to the administration of our school, and the teacher reported the academic dishonesty. The administration did a bit more digging and found that the pair had been making trouble for some time, and a number of students reported similar problems of having their work stolen. The slackers were expelled. It always amazes me. So many people go to school for highly skilled professional jobs and then try to cheat their way through. These people wanted to be engineers? And our last story. Buy out our company and then fire everyone before you change the system? Works for me. I'd worked at a small-end rural internet company for nearly 6 years. It was family-owned, and they paid us all really well for the work that we did. Barely anyone ever left the company. In my position, I was head of sales, and I controlled all software that was associated to clients. This had everything in it, including billing addresses, service addresses, and leads for new clients. It was an outdated program for sure, but it got the job done and it worked for us. Fast forward time, and we're still doing our regular jobs when there was an unscheduled meeting thrown at us. We walked in, and there were several new faces sitting at the other end of the table. They announced that they had sold the company to XYZ. XYZ seemed like an okay place to continue working because they too were local and the team seemed nice. I was told everything is business as usual and not to do anything different. The transition took place, and every so often, someone from the new company would come to me and ask how we do things and get a feel for it. I could tell they were trying to weed us out, so I went balls to the wall with renewals on old accounts. They announced to me that I needed to go to the HR department around closing time. Having anticipated this, I saved all my commission files and emailed them to myself. I went to the office, and they laid me off on the spot because they don't pay commission to their staff. I said okay, and that I plan on them still paying my commission for the time I was there, as they'd not discussed anything pay-related with me yet. She said again, we don't pay commission. I emailed my commission statement to the manager I was working with and basically was told the same thing. Fast forward to the next week when they realized they no longer had the credentials to get into our system, and they called to ask me for the information. I let them know that I would be happy to do that when I came up there to get my check for commission. I didn't hear anything the next day, and then I get a call that my commission check is in the office. I went up there, grabbed the biggest commission check I'd ever made, and gave them the credentials. Never tell someone business as usual when you do not intend on things being business as usual. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.